This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 11:07 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast, and you're on Ask a Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Lobb of Congregation Eitz Chayim. Welcome. Let me go ahead and take the mask the rest of the way off. And yeah. So I hope everyone is having a wonderful Friday. This is a beautiful Friday. It's another typical Florida sunshine kind of day. You know, it is. It's gorgeous out there. I had trouble getting my dogs to come in today. They wanted to stay in, but, you know, today is a day in Elul. So here we go. Okay, everybody.
Okay.
There you go. The sound of the shofar.
Oh, you got good breath there. That's, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
I
breathing
love it.
exercise.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
It is definitely a breathing exercise.
Our old chief photographer, Jeff Israel, had posted something on Facebook with his grandson playing. And, oh, it was great. He's such a little guy, and he did a great job.
You know, it's surprising how many can really do it well. It's a vibration technique. It's the same thing as the way that you do a conch, right? You know, it was kind of interesting because I was down in the Keys. The very first time I ever went to the Keys was just a little bit over 5 years ago, actually, 5 years ago this spring. And I walked into a store, and, you know, we were talking, and I said something about this being my first time down to the Keys, and they had conchs for sale there. And I picked one up and blew it. He's like, what do you mean it's the first time down here? You know? It's like, I know how to blow them. Right? It's a matter of knowing the technique. So, yeah. There's wonderful videos out there today of people riffing on them and doing all kinds of stuff.
So how many thousands of years does that instrument go back?
Well, at least 2,000. More than 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. You know, the tradition is that the very first one blown, and this is all legend, of course, it's not in Scripture, was that when Abraham sacrificed the ram instead of his son, that the shofar started. It was one of the horns caught in the thicket.
Okay.
Right, because that's how he catches the ram, right? It's caught in the bush by its horns. You know, and this is, you know, And I love the Yemenite ones that go, you know, there are some gorgeous things. It's not just rams. Right? The ram's horn actually is even more curved than this one. This is an old shofar, though. This is my father's shofar.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
And for folks and new listeners, your dad was a rabbi, too?
My dad was a rabbi as well. That's right. I'm the 23rd generation of rabbis in my family.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That is
we
so cool.
Go back, you know, and it's funny because my niece and nephew make a big deal of that, and I don't, but I guess that's because, you know, I grew up with my father. Right, for them he was the grandfather, and so it, I don't know, or maybe their father pressured them. I don't know, but in any event, yeah.
That is amazing. Wow.
Yeah, and according to my parents, I announced at age 3 that I was going to do it. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
the story I was raised on. Was being told that, and there's tons and tons of pictures of me as a little kid running around in a tallit and a prayer shawl through the synagogue. Is this little
Wow.
little, you know, knee high to a grasshopper kind of thing.
Sure. Where was
And
this?
Oh, that would have been Missouri, California, the places that we lived when I was little.
Wow. That's a great 23 generations.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. As
That is
my niece and
mind-boggling.
nephew like to joke and say, it's the family biz.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding.
Although most of the family did it much earlier in life than I did. Although so I have 3 brothers, one of whom is a rabbi, one of whom was a professor, sociology.
So in a way, you're all teachers.
Yeah, we're all teachers. The other
Wow.
one moved to Israel with his family, and I didn't have a lot of contact with him when he was growing up, so I don't know all the ins and outs of what he did and didn't do, but I think he was in journalism, actually. So.
Well, yeah, there's always an outlier.
Yeah, what can I say?
So at least 3 of you had honest honest
I'm not
careers.
saying anything. There's a tad of
Spoken as
journalism.
somebody who
There's
came
just
out in
there's
journalism.
that hair of journalism in my background too.
Oh my. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
having sat where you're sitting
There you go. Yeah.
for a few radio shows.
Yeah.
So radio is something that I've always loved. Radio, photography, those are my old loves, and I still have them. So yeah.
And you're a good photographer too.
Well, thank you. I enjoy it. I love it. I've still got a whole bunch more to post, and the irony of it when COVID started, somebody had finally talked me into selling some of the prints of my photography, and I did one trial sale at a nonprofit little vendor thing, and we were getting ready for the art festival, the art and craft festival for the temple, and I was going to have a booth with my photography
With the
in it.
photos. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And of course that didn't happen, thank you, COVID. But whenever we get around to it, the bins are ready. The bins are sitting in the room waiting patiently.
Maybe next
Yeah.
spring. Yeah.
I hope we can get back to things like that.
Well, we will.
I hope. Well, I guess what I'm saying is sooner rather than later, but it'll
Yep.
be what it needs to be.
Well, I was on your campus at Indian River State. We said goodbye to Dr.
Yes,
Massey.
Dr. Massey, and renamed
Ed Massey campus.
Ed Massey
Yep.
campus, and he
Yep.
an honor well deserved.
Oh,
Absolutely.
what a visionary.
Yeah.
What a visionary.
Yeah, he has done so much for the college, and the college has changed so dramatically. And to become an Aspen finalist, right? To win the Aspen, right? And become
Sure.
a top college in the U.S.
And wait till that advanced manufacturing building is built by the baseball fields, and that's going to be a whole different 21st century type thing tied with Tesla and a few other strange research companies, and it's like, wow, that's going to be very cool.
I think the future is very bright for IRSC.
I do too.
And,
Yeah, and I know it was funny. I looked around and turned around, and our basketball coach, Charlie Wilson, had his entire team there. Those kids are ready to go, and I guess we will be playing in January. We're not going to have any November, December games, but we'll have it'll be about 21 games schedule, which is a little less than normal, but hey, it's
what it is.
It is what it is. Exactly.
And hopefully we'll have things under control by then.
Yeah.
Right. That's the this is
Say our prayers.
Yeah. It's interesting because we're going to have a very different High Holy Days as a result of all this. Right. So we're zooming it, but the good side of that, there's always a silver lining when you look for it. And as I've mentioned before, we're lucky enough to have the likes of Craig Taubman for a guest spot. He'll be singing some, and there's just some gorgeous. I've been listening to some of the music that we'll be able to incorporate through guest spots, and our cantorial soloist that we normally bring in for the holidays actually lives in Tucson, and she'll be zooming in.
So
and
cool.
We'll have a couple of guest musicians as a result of that, because she's doing a couple of things there that we'll zoom in that we can't
From Tucson
that we wouldn't have been able to
Cool.
bring in otherwise.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, although it's going to be a very different High Holy Day, it's going to be a really, I think, a wonderful Zoom experience. It's going to be very different for people. They're going to be able to enjoy so much more than what we can normally bring into a sanctuary. So, there's always a silver lining.
Yeah, it's just different this year.
Yeah, it's going to be different. The thing that we'll be able to add that we will look at how to incorporate in the future.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's the key, right? If you just do it and then you put it away in a shelf and you forget about it, then that's a lost treasure. And we're not going to do that. We're going to figure out how to incorporate that. And I showed you one of the videos that I know we're going to be showing, and we're going to be able to do that in the future on the screens that are in the sanctuary.
I don't know why not. Sure.
So
yeah.
we'll be able to enhance the experience going forward. So, and that to me is the key, is always learning something new. And I know that at IRSC we've learned so much moving the classes all online, that all of the creativity that had gone into the face-to-face instruction, some of that now got applied to how do you do it online. And so there's more creativity. There's more emphasis on that, where I think that online had kind of been looked at as something that you did for people who either couldn't be in class or whatever. I'm not going to say it was second rate, because it wasn't, but it didn't get the attention that it got this past year.
Mm-hmm.
And the systems became much more robust. The offerings became much more varied. And yeah, it
was very interesting. We had a student in here last night from IRSC who works with Tom at the SBDC on the Pruitt campus, and she was last year because you've got a foreign student education program at IRSC, which I didn't even know they had, and she's going back and getting a double doctorate in Prague, Czechoslovakia,
Wow.
where she will be an English instructor working her way through as she is taking her doctoral stuff. I think that is absolutely fascinating. Just fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, so there really are some amazing programs out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something to look at, folks, if you've got youngsters out there
Yeah.
that are thinking about, and once again, I ran into one of our dual enrolled kids. They are not going to school at St. Lucie County Schools, but they are in person at IRSC.
Yes, IRSC has hybrid classes this semester.
Yeah.
So you do have a chance to be face-to-face. We also have what I'm running, which is synchronous online, which is we meet on Zoom. And my students were amazing. We had one class so far. We meet on Tuesdays, so we've had one. And it's on Zoom, and everybody gets on Zoom, and it's interactive, and there's questions, and there's give and take, and it's.
But it looks like a regular classroom. If I'm at home in this class.
I don't know about that, because it's my Zoom office.
Right.
It's not the class.
I get it.
Some profs may do that. I mean, that's certainly one of the options that IRSC opened up, was that if you wanted to come in and Zoom from campus, you could do that. One reason for doing that would be if you needed it for the internet, if you didn't have a strong enough internet
right.
to carry it. But I'm lucky enough that I do so much Zooming out of the home that I do have it.
Sure.
And I'm happy to report that we beefed up the internet at the temple, and it is, I was told, 5 by 5. So.
There you go. Well, and that area in St. Lucie West historically had very poor internet.
Yeah.
That whole strip down that street.
I'll tell you that it took the AT&T folks. A shout out to AT&T. They spent hours rewiring and bringing the cables into where they needed to be. and it's wonderful. It's this nice little box, the little router.
Everything's going to be
And
fiber optic.
it's all it's all it is fiber optic.
Yep.
And the guy from AT&T was a doll. He ran the cable through a protective sheath, and he did all the extras for us. And we've got about maybe 4 inches that we're gonna gently wrap in some protective cotton.
Sure, you bet.
And protect, because fiber optics are more fragile. They're not so fragile that if you touch them they break, but they are certainly more fragile than the old wire stuff.
Mm-hmm. Wow, the old copper.
Yeah,
sure.
That I used to love. I confess, as a kid, I used to want to get those cables that had all the different colored wires in them. Try to get 2 feet of the cable and then slit it and have all these different colored wires.
That's the engineering in you.
Yeah,
I
well,
swear.
or the artist, and play
yeah.
with it. I'd make things. I'd make animals, and usually animals is what I made out of it.
Okay, well that's cool.
Wire art kind of things. Don't have any of them left anymore.
But that you think back, and I mean I've seen some just absolutely amazing. Of course, this goes back to Tucson again. Some wire art that we used to see at the art festivals there that was out of sight.
Yeah. Well, of course, the I don't know when the telephone company stopped using that cable, that kind of wiring, but they stopped it along with the touch-tone phones.
Yeah.
That wiring was different, and it wasn't anywhere near as friendly for kid art. But, technology. It moves and it changes. So
now you realize there's some young listeners out there when she said touch-tone phones.
Have no idea what I'm talking about.
What is she talking about?
It's not a touch screen. It was a touch phone.
A touch phone, yes.
Yes, when the dinosaurs roamed at the New York World's Fair. What was that, 1963, 64?
4, I think it was, and that's
something like
Mets, that. Yeah, the Met Stadium was right next to the World.
Yeah, and part of that future,
the US Opens.
Right? The Future World or whatever that is at Disney was part of the exhibit, the Westinghouse exhibit. I even remember that. And I did go to that World's Fair, and the irony of it, I was a kid, and that's part of how my cousins in New York found me. They sent me a photo, and they said, "Is this you? Is this kid in the red sweater you?" And I was like, oh my gosh, boy, do I remember getting that red sweater from my aunt in New York on that trip. And I remember going to the World's Fair. And one of the things that we did was they had tests where you could test the dialing, if you could dial as fast as you could touch tone a number.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And of course,
the old dial phone.
Yeah, there's no way they're going.
Sure.
Could begin to match, ting 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 ting, and you were done. Yeah.
Just think of the technology, though. I mean, 64. That was my. Let's see. I was in college then. It's not that long ago.
No.
But you think of
it is for today's college students.
Oh well, yeah. 2010 is a long time ago for those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the reality is, right? So here we are holding an instrument that's thousands of years old.
Yes.
That the technology of how to make this is very simple. There's no metal in it.
It's just a horn.
It's just a horn. It's a hollowed out horn. This kind of instrument has been around. People make instruments since forever. You look at the didgeridoo, right, and it's made from a hollow branch that somebody apparently blew through and heard the sound. And the same with the conch. Somebody picked up a shell and played with it and discovered that it made music. So we've got this technology that's been around forever, and then we've got this little tiny microphone stuck in my iPad, streaming all over Google Home and Alexa.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. So we're this interesting cacophony of technology.
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
Cacophony.
It is a cacophony of
It
technology
is.
because everybody puts it together slightly differently. Some embrace it quickly. I know people who are always buying the newest gadget. They've always got the hottest new thing, and some of them are learning all the software they can learn, and God love them. I don't have the time to do all that, so part of me is kicking and screaming and doing what I have to do to be able to function. And then there are folks that are still, resistant to any technology. And there's this continuum of people all the way across the spectrum. We go all the way to the Amish, right, who are totally resistant to new technology, although they have refrigerators and computers in their barns. So slowly but surely, well, they do have gas-operated refrigerators.
There was this classic picture on Facebook. One of my buddies in Indiana showed it to me, and it was like, you see this Amish wagon.
Yeah.
And, a person driving the wagon, and then the lady next to him was on an iPad. I thought that was so funny to see. Sure. Yeah.
Well, and I will tell you that the smartphone is revolutionizing a lot of communities that would have been more isolated and insular. And there's a good and a bad side to all that, because now you've got to be a little more savvy as to what you let in through your porthole.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I would say that on an average day, I get somewhere between 300 and 400 emails a day. But out of that, less than 20 are worth opening. I get 5 million offers to extend the warranty, to become a secret shopper, that the IRS is about to arrest me, and you have to
your
get
car warranty.
Yeah,
Oh God.
And that Dr. Massey wants my password so that he can use my.
Yeah, sure.
If they find out where you're at, and those are called phishing, and they're trying to get passwords, they're trying to hack systems. And so, you do have to step up and become technology smart. Right? You can be really, really smart in a whole lot of other things, but you've got to get technology smart. And so here's the key that I would offer people on that. Think about how you might want to break into something and what you'd want. And if something's asking for that kind of stuff, be careful. Anything that says click here, you better know who it is that you're clicking.
Watch out.
Watch out.
Well, even some of your friends.
Well, because they're hacking
Because they're hacking your entire list.
Right. So one of the worst ones is, caught this video of you, or saw you in this video. Do not click that. Do not open it. Use your head. If you've got any questions, if it's your friend's email, query them. Did you send me that? Right. So one of the things that I've established is that I have a code. When I send something, for example, to my husband, there's a code in the email that tells him, yes, it's safe to click that link. Okay?
Interesting.
And I would offer that to other people, that, set up something that tells people, if you're going to share links back and forth, which we often do, right? If I send out a Zoom invite, there's a very formal look to it that sends out the Zoom link. And I alter it from what the company sends out.
Oh, I don't
so
even
that
know how
the
to
people
do
who
that.
are, cut and paste. It's not that.
Okay.
It's not hard. But I always change something and then I follow that format, right? So it's consistent to the people in the meetings, so they don't think that they're being, But check it. My computer is set up so that when I hover on a link, I can see where it really sends me. And if it doesn't match what it should match, I don't click it. Right? My email program actually warns me if it doesn't match what's written in the text, and that's not difficult software to acquire.
Well, and it's interesting.
Amish.
We get a bunch of stuff from our bank. Which, the big story there on CNBC earlier in the week is that they were hacked and, thinking, oh, man, this is unbelievable.
And that sort of thing's going to happen, right? People are going to get hacked. Stuff is going to get hacked. One of the things that I tell people is don't put something on email that you don't want on the front page.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Good rule of thumb.
And be careful, because it'll get forwarded, it'll get taken out of context, and just be careful what you write. And, you know, we all make mistakes and move forward, but the stuff that's on the internet lives forever.
Yeah.
And it acquires a new life all its own. And so, knowing that, there is a savvy to be attached to it, right? There's a wisdom. I remember kind of having this fun time way back in the Apple II days, right? In that brief period of the Apple II and then the Apple IIe, because we started with those computers, and we set up a little program. And this was almost too funny, for my mother and mother-in-law. And the program opened up and it said, "Hi, I'm the computer. What's your name?" "I'm the computer and my name is," whatever it was. I don't remember what we named that computer. "And what's yours?" And they would type in their name, and then it would go, "Oh, hi, Marion. How is so-and-so doing? Are they doing well? I haven't heard from them in a long time." And it would have this ongoing conversation, because, you know, and how did it do that? It wasn't the computer that was so smart. You know, we knew the things about my mother, and
Sure.
you know, we could tell it what to look for and how to continue the conversation. And she was absolutely convinced that the computer, you know, knew her, and say with my mother-in-law. But they hadn't, you know, we tricked them. We clearly tricked them.
The early days of AI.
Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't really AI. It was just
True.
it was a couple of if-then string statements. So it was not difficult programming.
Yeah, that's fun.
And that's back in the days when we didn't have anywhere near the fancy kind of software that and the tremendous tools that are available. And we didn't have apps. We didn't have apps, folks. It used to start up with this little carrot thing, and you had to tell it what to do, and you had to program everything that it did. And yeah.
So which class did you have on Tuesday?
On Tuesday, I had the Intro to Philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, well, I all of my classes have some Zoom, so it's Intro to Philosophy, and it's not Critical Think. Intro to Humanities is on Tuesday. Mondays is Critical and Creative Thinking, and then Thursdays is Ethics. It's a full schedule.
Wow. Cool.
So
Ethics.
yeah, those are ethics. It's a really good class in ethics. It looks at the ethics in the health industry. It looks at, here you go, Stuart, it looks at legal ethics, right? And, you know, we get into the discussion of what's a lawyer's job. What is the ethics, you know? And the thing that Stuart talked about a little bit on Ask a Lawyer, whether or not you are willing to let the guilty go free, or if you want to incarcerate the innocent. Right? Those are two different kinds of errors, type 1 and type 2 errors. And, you know, they're not just in the legal system. They're in everything. In computer programming, you know, are you willing to get the wrong answer? You know, do you want to reject the wrong answer? No. That's the ideal. You want to reject the wrong answer and accept the correct answer. How willing are you to reject the correct answer and accept the wrong answer? Those are type 1 and type 2 errors. And all software is built up on certain parameters of how tolerant are you of those kinds of errors.
Wow.
Because they happen. Life is not perfect. Right? You know, humans are not, we're perfectly human. But we don't always make the best decision. We don't always do the best things. We don't always consider all of the unintended consequences of our actions. You know, we all hold to certain ideals and certain core principles, and they guide us. And those are different from each person. And they're going to determine your tolerance for different kinds of errors. So, for example, if your core principle is my family is everything, okay, let's take it to some extreme. You might be willing to lie, cheat, and steal for your family because family is important. But if integrity is your core value, you might not be willing to do that. It has to do with what your core values are.
So you have a case like a Madoff thing. How does somebody like that, you talk about ethics, look themselves in a mirror when they know they're doing what they're doing on the business side?
They have a different set of priorities, and they may not even be capable of thinking into the big picture. They just may not be capable.
Wow.
And I'm not saying that's true about Madoff, because I've not. Right, that's one of the challenges in dealing with psychology and those kinds of things, that you can't really diagnose somebody unless they're seeing you for that purpose.
Sure.
So as I say that, it's a broad statement, but people have different levels of empathy, different levels of conscience, and how could Volkswagen have created software to cheat the emissions testing?
Smog, yeah.
Right, the U.S. was barely touched by that scandal, and yet it was horrendous here. It was like 450,000 cars, but in Europe it was millions of cars.
Oh yeah.
And and Volkswagen is still struggling to recover in the Volkswagen brand. They've gone through. Excuse me. Not a COVID cough, just a postnasal drip cough. Got lots of that. But they've gone through a new CEO in the Volkswagen brand.
Sure.
Quite often. But they're the goal, right? The central core position there was being profitable. And it's kind of the thing that Stuart was, talking about, that McDonald's, clearly knew their coffee was too hot, and they made a financial decision based on what they estimated the litigation would cost. And I know that when I worked at Goodyear, my group worked really, really hard to help management see that allowing certain things to go unrepaired was in the long run not in their financial interest, because very often industries will become tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Right. It becomes all about giving the money to the shareholders. It's all about the stock market. Right. And, I was actually thinking about that as I was listening to the news on the way in. Right. You go through all this horrible stuff that's going on, and the Dow is up 24 points.
Yeah.
The stock market is not a measure of our economy.
No.
And I'm gonna go out there on a limb, and I'm gonna say even the unemployment rate is not a measure of the health of our economy. Why do I say that?
Yeah, that's
okay. Because for a couple of reasons, the folks that are on the unemployment list are the folks that are actively looking for full-time employment, and who do not have part-time employment, and who aren't working at some minimum wage job to just do what they can to try to stay ahead of the curve. What we need is a measure of how many people are working below the poverty level. Okay, that's the measure of our economy. Where is the poverty level, and how much of our population is below that level, not earning enough as an individual or as a family? That's the real measure. And we don't have a good way to measure that. We don't have a good way. Unemployment is only a very small part of it. Right?
Yeah, they need to somehow figure out the underemployed.
Yeah. Right. The underemployed is a far bigger story.
Yeah, I would think so.
Right. And then you've got folks that, like American Indians that are on the reservation and have no hopes of getting a job, and they've given up. They're just trying to live at the bottom of the economy and make ends meet and go day to day. They're not going to count in those unemployment numbers, right? And I don't know the real answer, but I know that we need a task force, a think tank that can come up with a better measure, because that unemployment number is an artificial number. Just as the stock market is an artificial number. right now we've got tons and tons of people that are financially hurting, and some that are content to sit on their $600 a week. And you've got this whole confluence of everything in there. And I don't know the answers. I know lots of questions. And I also know that there's far too many people that have to make a decision between buying food and buying medicine.
Yes.
Right? There's far too many people that are food insecure, that feed their children rather than themselves, so that the kids will have something. And, we don't have a good measure of how many folks are on that continuum. How many parents buy the shirt and the shorts and can't afford the underwear? That's one of the things that our temple does. We supply underwear to school counselors to give out to the kids that need it, because that's one of the things that parents will scrimp on.
Yeah.
Right? Because it doesn't show, and they're so afraid of embarrassing their kid, but the kid doesn't have proper underwear. And that's the number that we need to get to. Right? We need to lift up that bottom so that nobody is lacking. I'm not talking about buying the $200 sneakers. I'm talking about being able to buy decent shoes. They don't have to be some trademark shoes, but they have to provide decent support for the feet. They need to have proper clothing that's not too tight, not too, etc. Those are basic human needs. Enough food that they're not just living on junk food to try to get calories in. And the whole food stamp thing is geared not really to a healthy diet, but to a calorie-full diet.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Right. So there are these deep systemic issues that we have that I'm going to say no president has gone and effectively addressed. Those are really big, deep issues.
Well, you mentioned the Indian situation as separate nations, if you will.
There's 600 and some recognized Indian nations.
Yeah, and
our
of
boundaries.
course the Seminoles are big here in Florida, and you have to wonder, okay, how many people are we talking there? Are we talking millions? Maybe not a lot of millions, but maybe a few million that need to be counted in everything.
Yeah, and that's a systemic issue of trying to break down the Indian culture.
That's ever since we got here.
Ever since
in
we
this
got
country,
here.
they've been trying to do that.
They didn't have an effective homeland security system set up.
You think?
And we no, don't even get me going there.
But the airplanes were great back then.
Yeah.
Oh my.
You're leaving me speechless here for a few moments. Not easy to do. But what we've got are these deep systemic cultural issues that most people turn a blind eye to.
But has every culture in this world had maybe not similar issues, but something?
Everybody's got issues. Everybody's got issues, and everybody's turning a blind eye to some of it. And, the real bottom line is the folks in power don't want to lose power. Right? You want to go back to 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem. The folks in power were the folks who supported the Romans. They were corrupt. They had power. They had money. They saw no reason to change the system.
Sure.
Right. The folks who started the various rebellions, however, had a different viewpoint. And their protests were much more dramatic than ours, and Rome's response to them equally, over the top. So, in some ways, the issues that we're dealing with, they've changed a little bit, but we're always going to be dealing with the haves and the have-nots. And until we, as a species, evolve to a place where that's not acceptable, where we don't live and say, oh, there's no such thing as privilege. I'm sorry, there is. Right? Folks that come from wealthy families have a step up over those who don't. Right? Folks who come from working class families have to work much harder. Yes, it's possible to be a self-made person. Yes, it is possible to rise. But it's a whole lot easier when you're starting from the top of the fence instead of the bottom. It just is. And and I don't have all the answers on how to equalize that. I don't want to take away the stimulus of a market system that rewards industry, but on the other hand, the folks who don't have the leg up need a way to get a leg up. And the folks who have the leg up don't want that. It's human nature, right?
I guess.
How many sports figures, if they were given a super great golf ball, would want to share it with their competitors?
Well, none.
Right. Okay, that's the point.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So that's what privilege is. Privilege is some folks have that super fancy golf ball.
Mm-hmm.
And others don't. And they're going to get farther on the green. They're going to get closer to a hole-in-one than the folks who don't have it. And, the real athlete wants to compete on a level field and know that they're not winning because of a cheat or because of a privilege or an advantage. Right? That's the real athlete. But how many athletes really are there? How many would really share that golf ball with everybody if they had access to it?
Well, that gets, at least in my realm, with the old Jackie Robinson, the Negro Leagues, those were true athletes that had to fight their way into the mainstream system.
Yeah.
And actually, if you look at the Fat Cat owners in baseball, they saw what the Negro Leagues were doing because the Negro Leagues were out drawing Major League Baseball teams.
Yeah.
That's why they brought the blacks into baseball.
Yeah, they had to
get some of the crowds that they were getting in the Negro League games.
Because the games were more exciting.
Exactly. Yeah.
So case in point, right? Things eventually equalize more and more, but never perfectly. And there is always that desire to win that outweighs the fair chance for everyone. Right? It's if I can get a half a second jump out of the starting pad in a race, who's not going to take it?
Yeah, I guess you're right.
It's a human nature and for some people winning is the whole game. For some people, and it's all a function of getting back to that, what's your core principle? What's the most important thing to you? If it's money and power and self, you're going to have a different set of answers than somebody for whom it's family, God, country, etc. Everybody's got different key values. Everybody's got different ways of expressing that. We all have basic human needs. We really do. All of us, there's a variety of systems. Maslow's hierarchy is one of them. The one that I find works the best for me to look at is that we all have a need to know that we've got food, shelter, the walls are not going to cave in on us. Because if God forbid we're in the face of a hurricane like the folks facing Laura right now, they're not thinking about politics, they're not thinking about art, they're thinking about, will my house be here tomorrow, or what will I do if it's not?
Plain old survival.
Survival is that's the first primary requirement for people.
Sure.
And yet other people will sacrifice their lives for family or for whatever, country, etc. So again, that can be subverted depending on your other key criteria. So another basic need is to be significant. You've got to be significant to somebody. Somebody has to want you or care about you or what you say. And, how many people that is, we can see that played out on the world stage. Different people have different needs for that. Some people have an insatiable need to be significant, right? And they'll lie, cheat, or steal to become significant to somebody. Another thing that we need, interestingly enough, once we've got security, we need variety. That's the third need. You don't want peanut butter and jelly every day for lunch for the rest of your life. Right.
Oh, I don't know. I could live on that.
Eventually
No,
you'd
I
want
get it. I
right?
get it. I
You'd
get
want
it.
to change something and
Sure.
put a little bit of variety, and we all need some of that. Some more than others. Again, so that's a third need. So we've got security, significance, variety, and then the fourth one is love and connection. A lot of people settle for connection. Love is risky. You can get rejected. Connection much easier, and you can do that. You can belong to a congregation. You can belong to a chess club. You can belong to a bowling league. You can get connectivity and companionship. Right. So there's those four needs. Now, here's the really bad part about. Then there's two more that I'll get into in a moment. But if you live in the hood, and you pull out a gun, you can satisfy those needs very quickly.
Yeah.
Right? You are significant to the person on the other end of the gun. There is a sense of variety because you don't really know what's going to happen. You are in control, though, because you're holding the gun and you're connected to that person. That's a really cheap way to meet those needs, and that's going to take a cultural change to get rid of that kind of expression of satisfying those needs. So every human being, and I'm not saying that everybody's going to pull a gun. That's not where I'm going with this, but everybody's going to find different ways to satisfy those needs. Some people will shout and scream, others will get depressed, others will become euphoric, some will give charity, some will everybody does a different set of behaviors. That's your personality as to how you satisfy those needs. And then once you satisfy those four basic needs, the needs of existence, then you can get into the spiritual needs, one of which is to learn new things, and then the last one is to give back to society. Right? Those are the spiritual needs that we as human beings have. And everybody is in those sets. Now, so where does Madoff come off, or is that kind of a character, right? Somebody who cheats, Tyco, as I mentioned earlier, Volkswagen. We're rife with Enron.
Enron, yeah, perfect example.
Corporate cheating,
corporate greed
has, and I don't think it's that the people consciously want to cheat somebody as much as they want to give to the stockholders or to themselves. I mean, if you look at Tyco, right, and I can't think of the name of the guy who did that, who went to jail for it. The name's escaping me for a minute because I'm so great with names. But there was an interview with him after he got out of jail, and he still was not repentant. He does not have he has carried this idea of, I'm entitled because I could do it. I figured out how to do this, therefore I'm entitled to it. He's never lost that attitude.
The greatest con man in history, yeah?
Well, and there's just not this perception of who are you hurting to get there. They're just not aware that people are hurt. They think that everybody else could do it, and they're just choosing not to. Instead of knowing that they are a con man, that they've found a way to play the game. And, so this guy, he even says, he got out on parole because he knew what to say to the parole board.
Oh, man.
You want to talk about playing the game. And that's you can find the interview with him on YouTube. So you've got to dig in through some of these things. These are people for whom different pieces are at play in that continuum. And I would say that there are some serious, right, there's a real lack of empathy showing up in anybody who thinks that they're entitled to the privilege that they have. There's a lack of empathy. And I know I showed you that video, and we'll be using it in the High Holy Days.
Yeah, it's great.
But there's a line in there, right, that says, no religion is better than any other as long as you can see the reflection of God in every face you behold. Mm-hmm. I'm paraphrasing it, but that's the point, is whether or not we can recognize that we're all on this rock together, right? Third rock from the sun. We are the third rocky planet in this solar system, and as one of the placards said in one of that, there is no planet B. It's not like we can go somewhere else.
Well, there might be if that asteroid hits us in November. What else could happen in 2020, right?
Well, if that happens, then we won't worry about a lot of things.
That's
right?
so true.
That'll get back to that first level
survival
need. And I can't tell you how many times asteroids have come close, and and certainly there's that crater in Arizona that had that one impact, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of thoughts that some different things that happened are related to asteroids. So yeah, it can change the world. We don't realize how much we really are dependent on a very fragile balance. It's robust and fragile at the same time. How is it robust? Well, the seas are rising, the storms are getting worse. We have the first named season on the good side. Laura is how many storms into the season?
Oh, yeah.
Right, we're already at L.
Second column already.
Right, and my heart goes out to everybody who was impacted by Laura. And
still being
it's still on its way through. People don't realize how many other states get hurricanes besides Florida and get pounded in serious areas.
Well, Little Rock suffered almost more damage in Louisiana,
Well, and I know that our Florida Power and Light folks are out there helping. My heart goes out to all of the folks who are fighting a variety of disasters, fires in California, power outages and flooding and all of that stuff. Stay strong, everyone. Know that our hearts are with you and that you all are doing very holy work to help the human race, the whole one human race.
Sure. Without
racializing. So, yeah. Right, and we can talk about that a whole session. I know that you're giving me the finger there, telling me that we're getting close. A nice finger, though. And we're getting close on end of time. So this is a good time to say, folks, if you'd like to join us for High Holy Days, we'll be streaming it. Please go online and register, because you won't get the Zoom code unless you're registered. We're not going to publish it anywhere publicly. It'll be only to the folks who've registered. So if you want that, please go online and register. Not going to send it out to the general list. Only those folks that we know will be there.
All right, so where do we find you on the web?
www.eitzchayim.org. Again, www.eitzchayim.org. And there will be a couple of Port St. Lucie events. We're going to go for a walk in the park and scare a few animals with a shofar. So all of those things are on the web, and you can check them out. And thank you for that. So, yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Friday night stream at 7:30 on Facebook Live.
All right. I'm going to
hit the shofar?
Sure.
Okay, I'll hit the shofar. Happy Elul, everyone.
You have been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie. Talk of the Treasure Coast, webcaster of the world. It's 12 o'clock.
This is CBS News on the Hour, your home for original